All right, welcome back to What Would It Cost? This week we're talking all things renewable energy. You bought a shed in Windsor?
You made money in the housing market last year? No way.
Anything you shot on you would have made on.
What would it cost?
That's the $1 million question. You're looking at North Bay now is at $1 million. I don't even think they hand you the keys anymore. What is it going to cost?
How much? Hi, my name's Nicholas Regina.
My name's Michael Sakuro.
And you're listening to
What Would It Cost?
Is that good? Hi, my name's Nicholas Regina. I'm the CEO and founder of Spark Financial Group, and we're excited today to have our expert in renewable energy, Gus Kokkoros.
Hello.
That's your camera.
Hello. So, how can I help?
Well, tell us a bit about your background.
Thanks. No, thanks for having me on, inviting me. It's important. It's an important topic. My background, I think, and most renewable energy professionals, it's still fairly new, maybe, 10 years old. Solar panels have been around a lot longer than that, but I came from a physics background doing geophysics, and that led into some dovetail the technology into wind farming and wind speed acquisitions and the data recording around that information, which fed into bankability of large utility scale wind farming. And with some of the incentives in 2008, 2009 that the Ontario government at the time put in place called the Feed-in Tariff program, I jumped in with 2 feet into solar, a lot of commercial rooftop and residential solar at that time.
Nice.
All right, awesome. And give some detail on that incentive they threw in 08 and 09.
Yeah, that's gone the way of the dodo bird. The contracts that are in place are still valid, and at the time they were 20 years in length. So essentially, the program was designed to taper off and to incentivize people to build solar on their rooftops. They were given a good rate. They were promised that anything that they would generate would be purchased and at a specific price at that time. The original contracts were, for residential, were 80 cents per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
And commercial were 71 cents a kilowatt hour.
Right.
And that over time, as more people bought in and the economies of scale improved, people got smarter about design, and contractors and designers such as myself figured out how to do it for less. You didn't need as much money to make it profitable. So now, today, fast forward, we're in a what's called the net metering program. So essentially, you generate solar energy. Let's talk about solar for example.
Yeah.
On your home, say you generate solar, or even a commercial setting.
Okay.
And you're going to pump those electrons into the grid. You're actually backfeeding one of your panels within the building. So your house panel, you're going to backfeed one of the breakers there. You put in a breaker designed for the solar. Okay. And it's engineered so it's safe. And you're going to use those electrons. You're going to use the electricity you generate. If you generate a little bit more one day when you're not, using, it's going to go onto the grid, and your meter will spin backwards. So you'll get a small credit.
Oh, wow.
And when you need electricity and you're not generating from solar, you're still attached to the grid, so you're feeding just like normal.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Right on. And how is that monitored? The metering there? Is there someone?
Yeah, it's all done with the utility. So if here we're in Toronto, so Toronto Hydro, it's called net metering program. Net metering program exists on Hydro One. It exists with Electra. So whoever your utility is, they have the net metering program. So and that's at the utility level. And so they'll, on a monthly basis, you'll get the bill, and you'll see. You'll see what the bill is. It should be lower if you're generating electricity. Okay. If you want a specific,
and you see what that
not on those bills.
Is?
If you want to specifically see what you're generating, there's usually a separate way to monitor that through the hardware that you're installing.
Okay. Yeah. So walk us through you approaching a homeowner and wanting to put a grid on their roof, and what that looks like in regards to the financing aspect of it, what their return on investment could be, their savings, the cost of the construction and the installation, and then how the government grants act as subsidies, right, towards that, and just paint that picture for us, right?
So I work with homeowners. I work even more with commercial property owners.
Okay.
And first of all, it has to make sense for the person, right? For the owner, for the business, whether it's a house or a building. Thinking about it technically, there has to be the opportunity, and we can talk about batteries after, but as far as solar is concerned, you have to be able to install solar, right? There's got to be enough roof space, and you're not going to install more than you need. So we'll pay attention to what the actual consumption is at the load or your building, and make sure that we're not putting in more than you need, because you won't get that back, right? That net metering
I thought it's like
resets.
get as many as you can.
It used to be like that, but not anymore. I mean, with the feed-in tariff program, as much as you generate, they'll take at that rate. Here, you're not going to generate. If you do generate more than you need, well, at the end of that 12-month cycle, it's just going to reset to zero. So you're not going to get the benefit. So we'll size the generator to the load. Make sure the roof can structurally hold it. Sometimes you're doing a ground mount. Sometimes you design foundations for all that, and then the process. We would walk the customer or the building owner through the whole process with the utility, because there's a engineering process that has to happen, an application process that has to happen. Depending on the size of the generator, you may get into things called connection impact assessments, and for your commercial developers, they would know what a offer to connect is. It's a similar process when you have a large load. In this case, you have a large generator. There's some engineering that has to happen to make sure the utility is confident with the installation. Homes, much more simpler, right? You're not going more than 10 kilowatts on a size of a system. And permitting, municipal permitting is a lot simpler for homes as well, but not impossible with commercial settings.
With homes on the residential side, talking about when you're talking about municipality and the permits, I know, like, for example, on the basic level, a shed can't be over the fence. So with a home, does it have to be strictly on the roof? It obviously can't be maybe in the front yard, or can it be in the front yard, or are you able to pretty much have these panels in your backyard? Let's say on the ground level.
No. It will be whatever's allowed within the municipal permitting, which is based, I believe, on the Ontario Building Code. There will be instances where you can put it on your property, but it really, whatever you can do now, like for example, a shed. If you can't put a shed there, you won't be able to put solar on the ground. If your roof has enough space, you'll be able to put solar.
So say you have 1,000 square foot roof. What does that start to look like per square foot in cost from A to Z to completion? And then what does that start to look like in regards to the investment making them money or saving them money? And how do you assess if it's worth it, or if it's not worth it? What's the minimum per square footage that you recommend someone would start with, the max, given that they cap it out at 10 kilowatts? What does that start to look like cost-wise?
For sure. Okay, so on the residential basis, you're never going to go above 10 kilowatts. Because you run into different restrictions permitting-wise. With the net metering program, you kind of, that's a threshold where you kind of get graduated into the next set of requirements if you're going to develop that type of system. So 10 kilowatts is essentially what the ballpark number is for any house as far as your peak load, right? So, and 10 kilowatts is a decent sized system. That's going to be, if you have it on all one roof face, and keep in mind, if you're facing south, it's the best. East, west also works as well. You're not going to install, many solar panels on the north side. There are some exceptions.
Yeah,
but, you're looking at 700 square feet, one array.
Okay.
1,000 square feet's good, right? You have some room to play with. You want to make sure that things like snow shedding is going to be maintained.
Okay.
You gotta preserve the integrity of the drainage of the roof, the eaves troughs. Usually you want to install solar panels 12 inches up from the eave of the roof, so that you're not going to get a sheet of ice shooting off of the roof and missing the eaves trough kind of thing. So it's good to have a little bit extra space, right? So you don't want to have like a visor sticking out over top of the eaves troughs, right? So 10 kilowatts. The cost of that, you're going to be probably anywhere between 20 to 30,000. I think 30,000 is up there. It's kind of an older price, but given the supply chain issues these days, shipping is a major issue.
Right.
A lot of costs, fuel surcharges, because gas is at $2 a liter now. So those costs are coming up. So if you're ready for something between $10,000 and $30,000 for around 1,000 square feet of solar panels, you're in the ballpark.
Oh, nice.
And then you talk to someone, put a specific design, and then get a real price.
Right.
And then what's it look like maintenance-wise? Like you talked about the snow, so obviously we got harsh weather here in the winter.
These things,
at times,
they get put through the ringer, right?
Okay.
They're dropping ball bearings to simulate hail. They have 25-year warranties on the panels. Usually 10-year warranties on the inverters. So they're built. They're built for. So
there's no like regular maintenance or upkeep you need to do. It's once it's up there, it's as long as
they require minimal maintenance. If you're getting a good installation with good products, one visit a year just to make sure everything's up and up, you're fine.
So now that you have the cost between $10,000 and $30,000, they're set up. And now they're saving on their hydro bill.
That's right.
So what does that look like on that home that has that kind of the 700 square feet worth?
Okay, so and here's where there's some additional incentives which really help out. On the commercial side, now in 2022 is the last year that you can write off 100% of the investment in the first year. And next year, you could be able to do 75% of the. In other words, as opposed to putting it in your asset pool and write it off over, say, its lifetime, which in this case it'd be around 10 to 20 years, depending on how you look at it. You can write it off all in the first year. So that's for the larger commercial properties. If you're putting in $1 million investment, and you're writing off $1 million in expense, right, or in write-off in this case, that's if you're a 30% tax bracket, that's $300,000 back the first year, which is amazing. Some things that are coming down the road, the ISO is doing something called the CEC, the Clean Energy Credits. So that's coming down the road where you'll be kind of given kind of coupons for the benefit that you're giving the world, right? So depending on what you're doing, if it's battery storage or solar or planting trees, or there's going to be actually clean energy credits for clean energy. So trees wouldn't count, but anything that you're doing to benefit, they're called environmental attributes. You're going to gain these clean energy credits, which there's going to be a market for, and you'll be able to sell. So that's over and above, and that's more commercial. Paybacks, if you're in a really good spot sun-wise and you're really smart with design, you get your costs down, I think you can have a return on investment within the first 4 years, right, realistically speaking. And then remember, that's a 25-year investment, so that's profitable for the next 21 years
Right.
after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's normal to see 7 years though.
Right.
I mean, I've done lots of deals at 7 years. It's not always the way that you look at those investments. Sometimes you're looking at, okay, my price of electricity right now, say it's 16 cents per kilowatt hour, I think is kind of a ballpark residential rate. If you look at it a different way, you can say, hey, by installing this, my cost of electricity now is like 6 cents or 7 cents, right? There's different ways of looking at the same investment. So some people want to put their money to work. They have to evaluate if this is the right investment for them. Sometimes there's the way we used to look at it in the feed and tariff program, and even now with some of the larger investments, you look at the internal rate of return.
Yeah.
And, leveraged IRRs are going to be up into 20%, right? Really good returns, right? If you're developing, and then sometimes there's aggregators that will go out and, just look for these projects onto their own, and they'll collect. We've done that. We've done that where we've put together hundreds of these projects, right, into portfolios.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't necessarily own the roof, but we'll own the system itself.
Right,
And
right.
That's a really interesting thing. That's kind of one of
yeah.
my passions. Really is.
Right.
We'd love to. We provide EPC services, so engineering, procurement, and construction. So we can do all that for you. But if you don't want to own the system at the end of the day, you just said, Gus, cut me in on the deal somehow.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put up the cash, we'll design the system, we'll provide ownership, maybe co-own it or own it 100%, and make it work for you that way too.
Let me rent your roof.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Sure.
what it is. Well, that was the thing, right? With the feed and tariff program.
Yeah,
and it was a good deal.
Yeah.
Landlords got free roofs out of it.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah,
absolutely.
The
So
whole,
when you were looking for the ideal roof to rent, what does that square footage look like?
Yeah, for sure.
The positioning of it, what is that? What's the biggest install you've done? The cost on that, right? And
so
yeah.
Commercial properties, you're looking at 100,000 square feet. It's a great roof to work on.
Yeah.
You can get up to say 500,000 square feet.
Right.
That's the bigger the better, right?
Yeah.
Especially now, as long as the engineering can, we're making sure that the roof can hold that.
Yeah.
And we're complying with the local utility, because you also the utility's got to tell you that you can connect a generator that big, because odds are, they have to be able to take all of that electricity should the load shut off.
Right.
So maybe you're going to have to put in other safety measures to make that utility happy. That's where batteries come in, things like that.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of 50,000 square feet and up.
Okay.
Is kind of where the things start to get interesting.
Okay, so
you're
when
talking about the financing, how to go about financing this.
yeah.
We'll so how does
insurance
the client
is
go
important,
around?
right, for financing?
So we'll go with the
I think you want to make sure you have your insurance buttoned up. And I've had people call me and say, I want these panels off my roof. I can't get insurance.
Right.
It's a big issue. And
Right.
what I find happens is same with bankers.
Right.
If they don't understand it, they don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right. And to go to that point too, we're having that issue with private mortgages right now, where there's a lot of providers that don't want to get behind title insurance in the private market, right? But there are niche and specific providers that do get behind these products. So is that very similar in the green energy world?
You got to find I like to call it like the risk of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
Engineers do it all the time. If they don't understand it, let's add 50% more strength to that, right?
Yeah.
And if you have an experienced engineer, that's where they're stopped. They'll have a standard. If you have an engineer that hasn't been there before, well, let's add some more buffer in there just in case.
Yeah.
So in the insurance and the financing market, they're going to offer you lending. They're going to put a higher rate on it, right? Well, we don't know what the risk factor is on this. We're not going to lend here unless you give us, this percentage, which is going to be 10% more than the next guy.
Right.
Which is only there because he doesn't understand the investment.
Right.
So there's insurance providers that are, and these are not, small insurance providers. There are, RSA, I believe, is one of the biggest insurance providers to solar. There's some of the underwriters are staying away from solar, but there's more and more all the time. I mean, look, with this war in Ukraine going on, the biggest conversation piece, is energy independence.
Right.
Not the biggest. I think the biggest is that there's a horrible thing going on in the world, and how do we stop that?
Right.
But as far as the money is concerned, or the safety, I should say, there's a big push in North America to get off of carbon-based fuels, right? And it's important to note that there's gigawatts and gigawatts being put on the grid every year, and utilities now are yearning for this. Government agencies are yearning for this. Federal governments have imposed requirements on municipalities it's a watershed, right? So every province has their targets. Municipalities have their targets to feed up to those overall targets. Everybody has to hit a certain kind of net zero, and renewable energy is one of the only ways to do that, right? So the goal of the ISO right now, the Independent Electricity System Operator in Ontario, they control the grid here. They're looking for new generators. There's nuclear power plants that are coming offline. We've removed all of our coal burning facilities in Ontario over the last 10 years. It all happened long ago. We have a really clean grid already, but we're making more efforts to get away from carbon-based generators, and we need more generators. So there's a lot of affinity for utilities to say, homeowner A, B, C, we're going to give you those contracts. Put in your application. It's not a difficult thing to do. I mean, I like to get into the weeds, so it tends to sound a little bit more fancy than it is, but it's because I'm talking about the details. But these things are going in hundreds and hundreds at a time, both commercial and residential.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
I should say too that I'm not a renewable energy purist, right? I'm more of a realist. There's a place for carbon-based generators in our grid, right? We have there's peaks that we can't sustain without gas, liquid natural gas generators. So but the goal is to move away from that, and this is right from the ISO's mouth. They want to have that for peak, for the peaks, and for and for the safety of it, and for they're very nimble. They can be turned on and off fairly quickly, unlike nuclear and solar, which is just on during the day, and wind, which is usually much more stronger at night. Right.
Very cool. And so just to go back onto the insurance aspect of it, on that typical grid that you would put on someone's home that we were speaking about would cost in the range of $10,000 to $30,000. What does that look like from the insurance standpoint, like in regards to there being niche providers and what that does to the annual insurance, if anything at all, or if you just got to make them?
I can get you that number.
Yeah?
I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
We're talking, at the end of the day, think about it as a $20,000 asset.
Right.
So how much more in insurance is that? A couple $100?
Yeah.
Right.
If that.
Maybe $100, $150.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. It's been a while since I've. Like, every home I've had has, except my first one, has had solar on it.
Right.
And and I just moved. So when you put the solar on this one, I will. I'll tell you what that insurance rate is.
Yeah.
But I mean, we manage 150 sites, residential, that we just visit once a year. We react if there's squirrels left to chew on wires. So we put in critter guard.
Okay.
And all of those are insured.
Thank you again for coming out today. We really appreciate it, and you definitely gave us a lot of knowledge in like a niche market that not a lot of our viewers know about, and not a lot that we know about.
Sure.
So where can everybody check you out and get in contact with you?
I'm at IPG Electric.
Okay.
I do a lot of work with Speed Electric as well. 40-year-long company, specialize in high-rise electrical. My firm's a boutique firm. We do mostly renewable energy, and we've been doing it for a long time now.
Yeah, awesome.
Really appreciate you having come on here and again spit that knowledge out for us. And it's we were all ears. It was very interesting. It's something that is so niche, maybe even a micro niche, right, kind of thing. And but great to know. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again for tuning into this week's episode. Really appreciate all our viewers and the support. Be sure to check us out on all our socials, our YouTube channel, and your favorite podcasting and streaming platforms. Be sure to like, share, follow, and we'll see you next week.
Big shout out to Gus from Icarus and keeping us in the know about everything to do with renewable energy.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Next on What Would It Cost?
New pre-construction right now. There was a few releases over the last 30 days. They came in at 1,200 to 1,400. If you look at, for example, the Van Dyke release, Lakeview Dixie in Port Credit. When you look at Manhattan, New York, their starting average per square foot is 4,500 US, all the way up to 15,000.
Right.
So Canadian properties and Canadian investments are still relatively low.
Right.
And it is still a great time to buy and build on that equity now. The Buzz Conference is something that has just come together over the last 12 years. Over the last 30 years, I've always been passionate about attending conferences globally. I've flown all over the world, and I've always had a passion to share knowledge, but also use that as a way to network and build those critical relationships. Those are things that we try to implement into the Buzz Conference.